Geometry lesson 7-2, specifically looking at reflection. We've got a concept here known as the line of reflection. It's the mirror line between the pre-image, which is the original image, or the original object, and the image. It is equidistant to each corresponding part. Now that's really pretty important, the equidistant piece. It's not like we can have a shape on one side and we can go, well, you know what, I'm going to clone this shape so it's over here and then flip it left to right. I cannot say that the line of reflection is right there, because that is not equidistant from the two objects. So even though you might look at it and go, yeah, but it definitely flips, this object is only that far away, whereas its counterpart is so much farther away. It must be equidistant in order to actually work. So instead, if we wanted to, we could say, okay, looking at this shape, it looks like right about in there. And now if we draw from here to here, we notice that these distances are equal. So that's what makes them a line of reflection. So the line of reflection is this right here. Okay? Reflection is an isometry. That means that when we reflect an object over a line, we will not change this object at all. We won't change its lengths, we won't change its angles, we won't change the size. It will stay exactly the same size, dimension, everything. It'll just be flipped over a line of reflection. So it will remain the same. That's what this means. Isometry will be exactly the same. Alright, a line of symmetry is any time that a shape can be mapped onto itself. Anytime you can cut an object in half and have it fold on top of itself, that would be a line of symmetry. Probably the best example is when people are trying to make hearts during Valentine's Day. Typically what we do is we fold a piece of paper in half and you cut out half of the heart. And then when you open it up, both sides of the heart are symmetrical. And there's a line of symmetry going right down the middle of the heart. So here are some shapes with some fairly typical lines of symmetry. With the old square, I only drew some of them. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's actually a 4th line of symmetry, because it would cut that in half right there. So there are 4 lines of symmetry. Depending on the type of triangle you're dealing with, this happens to maybe look more equilateral, so maybe it has 3 lines of symmetry. But if it were something else like an isosceles triangle, maybe it would only have 1 line of symmetry. It depends on the type of triangle. Circles, I only drew some. In fact, you would never be able to stop writing all the lines of symmetry if it's a true circle, because it would be able to fold anywhere in half. So there's infinite lines of symmetry. And a shape like this has no lines of symmetry. It has nothing where you could fold that shape in half and have it map onto itself. Now, symmetry is something that occurs in nature. You look at these flowers, these hydrangea leaves, you definitely see some lines of symmetry. Now, they may not be perfect, but they're pretty close. So there's some lines of symmetry involved in nature. You've got butterflies, definitely have a line of reflection, line of symmetry. This side seems to be a matching mirror image of each one of those sides. And it's very pleasing to the eye when we see lines of symmetry. So even in architecture, we look for lines of symmetry. Down the front of this building would be a line of symmetry, where this half of the building seems to match up with that half. And in fact, in the backyard, right down the middle, seems to match up. All right, at least the chimneys do. Now the window doesn't actually match up here, so maybe that would be not such a great example. But the chimneys are definitely a reflection of each other. And the front is a pretty decent. You want to look at that. If one side looked different than the other, we'd probably walk up to that building thinking something was wrong. And here's an example of a line of reflection right along here. You can see it's being reflected into the lake. So the lake itself with the land is the line of reflection. In this, maybe there's lines of symmetry, maybe there's not. I think that probably right down the middle of each one of these balconies seems to be a reflection. Now this part's not, but that part seems to be symmetric. Maybe not exactly where I drew the line, but I definitely see some lines of symmetry in there. So architecture uses lines of symmetry quite a bit because it's very pleasing to the eye. and it comes up in nature, which is probably why we like it in architecture. It's because it seems to fit naturally. So line of symmetry folds it in half.